Hello there everybody, and welcome to a fairly unusual TFTCG discussion video. Anthony joining you once again, and while we're waiting for the next standard encounter to happen, Encounter 4 is going on right now at the time of recording this, but it's fairly wonky, I figured it'd be fun to go into some deep dives on things in regards to where we know the meta to be as a result of Encounter 3. And we'll start that part off by talking about all the combiners in the game and discussing if they have anything going for them at the moment and how much of a splash they could make going forward. We'll start off with 4 easy ones: Dreadwing, Volcanicus, Skytread, and Tidal Wave. Dreadwing still hasn't found a decent partner yet, and it's still absolutely punishing to bring out unless everything goes right. Volcanicus was actually hit as a result of the recent change to move damage that was made to nerf Sludge and allow for new Dinobot support, and he's also been historically more of a gimmick for big numbers, especially after Jurassic Punch was released. Skytread, even with his Wave 7 support, still doesn't have a lot going for him, especially when compared to Sky Shadow, and Tidal Wave is kind of a mix of all three. No good partners, historically a gimmick, and doesn't have a lot going for him despite support in a later wave. All in all, unless Wheeljank and Naga start sharing their copium stashes, none of these are seeing play anytime soon. So those 4 are fairly safe bets, but there's one combiner I really can't get an effective read on: Optimus Maximus. Now, Prowl and Ironhide are fantastic attackers for what they are, and Opmax having the highest base attack in the game while getting to draw at minimum 3 extra cards every turn cycle isn't anything to scoff at. The problem is I just don't know if he's good enough, and in the event he is, whether a blue or an orange build is the correct move. If you go orange, you're able to keep up with the Alpha Strike capabilities of the meta, but you risk Opmax not sticking around for long enough to matter, assuming you have time to get to him in the first place, while a blue build fixes that problem, but it doesn't have nearly the damage output to deal with any other blue decks. At minimum, a blue build will be able to still put some damage through against aggro decks, but I don't know if you'll have enough time for that to work before Opmax just starts getting wheel turned to death. It's an interesting question, and one a few people might look to solve once Wave 9 is released and Racing Stripes enters the game. Anyways, on to combiners I have a lot more to say about, and we'll start with Superion, aka the victim of the most unfortunate mag ray ever during the OI. Historically, between the release of Wave 2 and Wave 7, he was the best of the Scramble City combiners, and he still has some stuff going for him since he's able to tank a lot of the Alpha Strikes that Y decks seem to be packing as a result of E3. Plus, he's got a decent amount of support in Wave 8 to add on to Power Glide and In the Name of Slingshot. In particular, Revving Up gives him a bit of extra Pierce when it's needed, Patrol the Perimeter gives him extra Black Icons without giving up a lot of Tough, and Severed Combiner Hand gives him just a bit of extra Pierce negation, though it's worth noting that last one hurts Superion just as much, since you're going to be relying on chip damage pre-combine, and your inbuilt Pierce 3 gets negated post-combine, so you better be packing armor removal and all the extra Pierce you can carry. All that said, I think Superion's viability comes down to if you can build him properly, as if an Alpha Strike gets through at all, your pieces are dying and it makes it much less inevitable that you win if you combine. Moving over to his nemesis, we have Menasor, a card that's pretty intriguing. I believe I discussed this a bit after Encounter 2, but the amount of power actions that are in the game has skyrocketed since cancellation. Angle Wand, Tetranite, Lose the Battle, Open Agenda, Scrounging for Energon, Whipped into Shape, Patrol the Perimeter, Shanix Laundering, and even all of the rolling actions have been added in the past 3 waves. And while there's only one offensive power tool among those in Anglemois, 3 additional draw tools, 3 extra secrets, a recovery tool, and a whole host of rolling actions that either help close out games or extend them when you need it the most isn't anything to scoff at. However, all of those options means we don't know what the best list or lists are at the moment, but when it comes to labbing combiners, there's one individual that's going to make or break the formula for Menasor success: Wheeljank. He's been labbing with most of the combiners since the start of the season, and that included a top 8 run with Menasor in Encounter 2, which was the encounter where only even-numbered waves were legal. And while Evens format success doesn't immediately translate to standard success, knowing the variety of stuff he's managed to make work, there was a good chance he was onto something, so don't be surprised if you see him running around with Menasor trying to optimize him. And also don't be surprised if you see me flailing around with him in an attempt to optimize him because my copium stash is currently in overdrive as a result of making this video. Speaking of combiners that Wheeljank has been labbing, Predaking. I think we've all wanted Predaking to see some sort of play at one point or another, but things just aren't going his way for this current meta, unfortunately. Again, we're in a fast-paced Alpha Strike format that's ruled by stuff like cards and other wide aggro decks, and Predaking not only needs 5 turns to flip, but also a couple extra, because odds are you aren't going to be dropping the Enigma when there are 5 weapons on your side of the board because KOs and the increased prevalence of ramming speed and vaporize. And even with a blue shell, I don't think he has that time in order to compete. Unfortunately, I think he's become more of a gimmick deck as a result of the format, plus the frequent addition of 2 foes, 2 fists in the deck. With that being said, if the format slows down in any capacity, then we may want to look at Predaking as a possible contender. However, I don't know what chain of events are required to get to that state from the current car/aggro-centric meta we're in at the moment, so maybe it won't happen, maybe it will, who knows. And to round out the Wave 2 Combiner discussion, you all knew this was coming, Devastator. If you've been in the community for long enough, you'll know I'm one of the top experts on Devastator theory, and he's become my go-to competitive deck as a result of my top 4 run in Encounter 5 last season and my 3rd place finish in the OI. So, where's Devastator at now? Well, the results with him in Season 2 Encounter 1 explain the current state of DEVY pretty well. The deck still wants to play less as DEVY Turbo and more as 6-wide aggro, ideally using DEVY as your final kill shot. I have my current build of the deck on screen now, and the first thing you'll notice is that it's playing 45 cards. To be frank, you get so much draw from Malevolent Architect that those extra 5 don't dilute the consistency of the deck in any capacity. As for the core pieces, the 12 weapons are essential as your game plan is to be dropping a power offensive action and a weapon every turn, plus the 3 copies of Rage helps to clean up board states where the pieces are just a bit too small to get a KO. For removal, 3 ramming speed means you're guaranteed to see it because of the draw consistency, while 2 bashing shield is always a good idea. In terms of our true offensive actions, Cayman, Fight for Position, and Corrupt are always staying in the deck, and that leaves us with Supercharge, Hold the Line, and Towering Presence as our flex slots. These 3 cards help to ensure that you're able to hit hard against other wide decks consistently, but in the event you face a tall team, you'll want to swap all 9 of those out for Heat of Battle, Designated Target, and Belligerence, plus maybe a copy of Counter Espionage depending on what you're facing, and you're ready to go against a tall team. Of course, if the meta shifts at all to taller builds, you just reverse the sideboard and the flex slots in the main, and you're good to go. Moving on to Wave 4's other combiner, we have the manifestation of my nightmares in Captain Omega, a combiner that is annoying as hell to play against, if nothing else. However, and I hate saying this, I do think he has some stuff going for him in this meta. We're in a very aggro environment, and as a result, Bold is flying all over the place. As such, decks may not be prepared to pivot to raw attack boosts to play around Omega, and thus Omega can combine fairly quickly, smash some faces in, and make me saltier than your average Overwatch lobby. However, that does have a bit of a downside, and that's you're becoming less wide more quickly in an inherently wide meta, though the 3 defense and the fact that he's more viable in a blue shell because of that, the inbuilt Pierce 4, and the fact that you need the pieces to survive to have a chance make that downside sting a bit less. So overall, he's probably fine. It's a coin toss as if he'll go far, but he'll win you a healthy amount of games, though that may change in his favor when Wave 9 releases, but we'll see how that goes after balancing and testing concludes. We then have one of the boogeymen of Wave 5, Sky Shadow. But Anthony, I hear some of you say, isn't Sync banned? How are you supposed to play the combined version of him in the first place? Well, the answer is that we have a 3-star version of that strat in testing. Assuming all goes well and it's released, where does Sky Shadow fit in? Truthfully, I'm not sure. All of his best partners were either banned or invalidated by the star increase of the strat, and we're still trying to figure out what works best with him. During the new Old School event, which was waves 1 through 5 with modern ban lists, 4 different Sky Shadow decks were running around, all with different partners. I used Aimless, Zero used Novastorm, Bretosaurus used Cup with Vorath, and GN actually made Sky Shadow his sideboard plan, with Tailwind being the partner as a result of what was on the main deck team. GN actually never went into full Sky Shadow, if I remember correctly, so that's only 3 true Sky Shadow decks that were around, and only 1 made top cut, that being Brett's build that got second. And while Cup did perform pretty well in that event, I don't know if that's a matter of Brett being really good at the game, Cup being a strong option, or if it's a combination of both. And because of that, I can't really place Sky Shadow anywhere right now besides being a rogue contender, since it's going to take a lot of testing to figure out what his best partner is right now. And now we get to the Wave 8 combiners, starting with the smallest of the bunch in Roadmaster Prime mode, and he fits right in with all the wonky effects Wave 8 added. The drones do add some great utility when you need it, and Detritus is surprisingly beefy, but you have to build a Roadmaster deck in a specific way to ensure your opponent gets screwed over by the combine trigger and you don't, in addition to needing as many upgrades as possible to get your drones out when Roadmaster goes down. Because of all the pieces needed, I don't think he has a spot in the meta right now, given the aggro decks that are at top tables, but like Predaking, if the format slows down enough, he could sneak in fairly easily. For Thunderguts, he's positioned a bit better. The deck naturally requires you to be playing lots of effects that give Drifter to your opponent, which negates orange icons, and in an aggro meta, that seems pretty decent, though there is a bit of nuance. If all aggro decks look like cars, then you're going to have a good time because all that bold ain't going to do jack squat. If they look like bikes or Devastator, it's not going to be as effective because raw attack boosts aren't affected by Drifter at all. Though, given the dominance of cars as of late, I wouldn't be surprised if they stay at the top for a while, giving Thunderguts possible room to sneak in, assuming you figure out how to clean up the normal attack values of whatever's punching you, as well as finding ways to keep Stockpile and the 5-star if you choose alive for as long as possible. Because of those elements, and the fact that DEVY actually still kind of looks good, he's probably a rogue contender, but it could easily change if DEVY is forced out. And finally, Abominus. Remember everything I said about DEVY? Abominus has a very similar thing going for him. Just replace the draw engine with some amazing counterspells and defensive tools, and you've got an absolute menace on the table. But not only that, Wheeljank has proven that control versions of the deck are viable, so he's not even a one-trick pony. He's very adaptable to the meta, and it's possible there's a way to slot the control variant in the sideboard should you find it necessary. Between the two, though, the control variant does take a bit more skill to pilot, but if you're practiced with it, it can easily make a run to top cut, though I do think the aggro variant is a bit more refined at this moment, and thus is likely the better version of the two. And that is where all the combiners are at right now. I know I didn't say much for the Wave 8 combiners, but those have been out for a lot less time than the other ones, so we don't have as much data to know where they possibly could go. Maybe this entire discussion gets upended, though, once it gets uploaded. Who knows? We will see what happens. But for now, hopefully you enjoyed what you saw here today. If you did, there's a little red button you can push down below to show that. And don't forget to go into the comments and roast me about how wrong I am on all of this, because I know there's at least a few of you who disagree with everything I said. But I will wait patiently for that, and in the meanwhile, that will do it for this video. Peace out, y'all.